session on intentional water management. And I think the key here, I'll just cut to the chase since we've started late, and one of us, me, is going to have to leave for a plane pretty much at the time we were supposed to end. So I think we'll just jump into it. But I wanted to lay out a little bit before we get to this amazing set of actors and practitioners the point of this session. Like all David Abel Death March sessions, it's going to feel too short and too superficial for some, and for others who just want to get a sense of what's going on out there and to follow up, it's going to be just perfect. Hopefully we will leave you wanting more. But the key to all of this, and the reason for doing it, is observing over the decades folks doing a lot of talking about water management, folks making a lot of progress, which I'll talk about in a moment, but trying to highlight that getting to where we need to go in order to have a resilient future in the urban or rural or any other place requires not just theory about what can happen or just doing a really good project, although incredibly good projects are an important part of all of it, but takes a mindset change where folks are thinking about what are the needs along the water continuum for a given community and figuring out how to make each molecule of water do the most duty it can for each scarce local, state, or federal dollar out there. And to do that actually requires folks who are risk takers, but also in the technical sense or financial sense, but also risk takers in reaching across traditional divides to work with folks across geographic lines that they didn't have to work with before, or across functional silos that they might not have to work against, and frankly, it really just takes a lot of really hard, thoughtful work to think about that water molecule all the way through the system. So we're going to give you a few examples of that, and I chose paradigm shifts, frankly, just because what I see us doing is shifting to a paradigm where this becomes more normal and regular through the successes that these folks are a big part of and the people whose shoulders that they stand on, and it's all really in the details. It is this paradigm shift whose time has come, and not a moment too soon, and a huge transition that's been 30, 40 years in the making, and many of the people in this room have been a part of making it happen. There are even more people out there who've been talking about it. The key people we wanted to bring to you today are people who are actually doing it, to get into the guts of some things and to give you a sense of the different kinds of creative projects that can happen, because although we are in an evolving era, in an era where we're talking about projects like this, where we have the largest water recycling, groundwater replenishment program in the world, where we have the county, which has been actually capturing stormwater for decades and getting it into our groundwater basins, but have plans to do even more in concert with its partners at a time when we're talking about figuring out in the city how to even connect my favorite, DWP and sanitation, into a One Water family to try and figure out how to deal with flood control, water quality out in our bays and estuaries, deal with water supply augmentation and greening the most park-poor major city in America. We're not moving fast enough for the challenges that are coming at us. And you may wonder why I put this picture up, and it's just because I thought it was kind of soothing. So here's why we're doing it. You've heard me talk about this at other conferences. Climate change is on the way. During the drought, we had a taste of the worst snowpack in 500 years, what that looks like at the end of a 3 or 4 year drought, and the consequences were very painful. It was just a wake-up call, an appetizer for what we know is to come with climate change, where a few degrees rise in temperature will yield maybe the same amount of precipitation but less snowpack. Snowpack is our major source of storage in the state, and as an administration looking at that, the governor said, wow, we're late, not a moment too soon. Let's put all of these things people have been talking about on speed, not just at the state level, where part of our job is figuring out how to get money to folks and how to get out of the way when it's right and how to incentivize this integrated thinking, but all of us, meaning localities that do the lion's share of all the work and the financing anyway, and figure out how to all be moving in the same direction to make our communities more resilient, which is not a cookie cutter exercise, but a custom exercise. There was our drought, worst wake up call, and a Godzilla of all wake up calls. Sorry, I just like that picture too. I'm a self-entertaining unit. I apologize. I hope you're entertained too. Here's the water action plan that we came up with. I encourage you to read it. I won't go through it here today, but just to say it is an all of the above menu of things where folks need to pull in the pieces that work for them across the spectrum: efficiency, recycling, stormwater capture, desal even in the appropriate places, dealing with the delta, restoring ecosystems, the whole kit and caboodle. And the first thing out of the box was groundwater management legislation, which took 100 years to get, and which is thankfully under action. Why? Because those groundwater basins are the only thing that can approximate in size the snowpack that we're going to lose. And in the urban context, that means really focusing on figuring out how to clean up contaminated groundwater to pump, treat, and serve, as opposed to having our processes, in some cases, encourage people to treat it and then dump it in the LA River or dump it into the San Gabriel River, rather than thinking of the full cycle of benefit we could get for that water. And LA is right at the heart of that. So our solution is integrated water management. Fortunately, there's all kinds of things we can do and that are being done around the state, and many of you are part of it. You're going to hear some great examples. There are great examples not only in the urban sector. We'll focus on the urban sector here today. And then why is Juan Juan here? Juan Juan, one of the mascots for the Beijing Olympics, is not fire. Juan Juan was the principle of fire, which is like my favorite mascot ever. But the reason Juan Juan is here is because we have analogies to this in the dialogue that's finally happening about upper watersheds, where the dialogue and the discourse there was clear cut, save every tree. Clear cut, save every tree. I see money in products and fiber. I see this beautiful forest ecosystem. And where we're finally starting to get some traction is in people talking about managing our upper watersheds intentionally, not just as a byproduct of something, so that we'll reduce our fire risk, capture more carbon, and sequester more carbon in the larger trees, and look at the whole systems approach to upper watersheds. Similarly, in agricultural rural regions around the state, this is Don Cameron, folks are focusing on not just having groundwater recharge be the incidental byproduct of flood irrigation or an argument for indiscriminate flood irrigation, but more intentional targeting of those areas where you can get water in the ground fastest when it's there, either during the wet season or in a wet year. And Don Cameron is one of the real leaders in that, changing it from an is so, is not your jerk, no I'm not level of discourse to very intentionally thinking about whose farm is in the place where we can get water in fastest, as opposed to it being an all or nothing proposition. And again, work being done on how that upper watershed management also can lead to enhanced retention of snow on the ground to mimic some of the snowpack that we're losing, to be able to restore it so that we get the water when we need it in the spring and the summer months to replenish reservoirs and replenish our streams. Similarly, there's a whole nother conversation we could spend a whole session on, of the growing focus on floodplain management to deal with flood control and creating habitat for fish at the same time. Again, none of these things are rocket science in the technical standpoint. They have been cocktail party conversation fodder for decades. There are actions happening right now on the ground to prove them out, test them out, with, for example, rice farmers trying to figure out how to hold water on their land so it can provide sanctuary and fish food for little salmon before they make their treacherous journey out to sea. It's very exciting stuff we're in the middle of. And then, of course, again, this slide is my Cape Town slide. And the reason why I didn't give you a beautiful picture of Cape Town is because trendalizer's got to be one of the coolest words out there, right? So I'm trying to show you things that you might not see otherwise. And so, our worst case scenario, one that I don't think is even remotely possible in a state like California, where folks have done so much since the last few droughts to become more resilient, where you have a city well, it's a city of 400,000, but it has a service area of well over a million, maybe over 2 million, is running on to day zero, which has been moved from May of this year till sometime in April, where literally the taps of a major city in the world will be turned off because they haven't done recycling, because they haven't figured out how to manage groundwater, because they haven't done the investments that we're well on the way to, and where their efforts at encouraging conservation didn't yield the kind of results that we got, for example, during the midst of our drought, but we still use twice or three times as much as they do. So again, easy for us to be proud of our 25% reduction. But this kind of problem, if we don't get off our butts and focus on real intentional actions as rapidly as we can in the most creative ways we can, is something that's still closer even as a theoretical possibility than we would like. Sao Paulo got very close to it, and then they got some rain. Australia ran head into it and had to spend billions on desal facilities they didn't turn on for 10 more years, and would have much rather taken the time and built them at a more reasonable rate and more modern technology. So again, all reasons for being far more intentional about our water management. And so we're going to give you some examples. I won't go into long bios because we don't have much time, but I'm pleased to be joined today with John Lieberzoon, VP of Business Development from Tomorrow Water. He has a long and illustrious career that's very interesting. I encourage you to look it up. And he's going to give some international examples of ways people are looking in Korea in particular at trying to get multiple benefits out of their projects, thinking like a regular person would as opposed to thinking with our professional siloed hats on. Dr. Mark Gold, who is no stranger to anyone in this room, now Associate Vice Chancellor for Environment and Sustainability at UCLA, is a leader in the Sustainable LA water movement, starting with Heal the Bay, but moving through a host of things that I hope he'll talk a little bit about. A real treasure for us to have here in LA, and really, really important. Mike Marcus, no relation because he spelled his last name wrong, is General Manager of Orange County Water District, which, as I said, is the leader in recycling for groundwater replenishment, in the world. We have an alliance of the LA County Sanitation District and Met that wants to take on that challenge, and it's exciting. The more competition, the better, especially right in our own backyard, but a real leader in groundwater management, also figuring out how to make every drop count along their watershed. Angela George Moody is the Assistant Deputy Director of LA County Public Works, again, stepping into an august history of amazing groundwater recharge that nobody here seems to know about in LA, and should. It's a hidden treasure. And in the last few years, as we've discussed at Verity Exchanges, over time, the county has really stepped up as a partner with City of LA and others to go even further as a partner, and has an exciting measure that we'll be seeing coming up soon to do even more. And then last but absolutely not least, Tracy Minamidi, the COO of the City of LA's Bureau of Sanitation, a key player in implementing great programs over the years, but also Mayor Garcetti's very impressive water directive, which calls on the city to cut in half its dependence on imported water in a relatively short time, at a time when I think last year, year before, they were 88% dependent on imported sources. So definitely a big, hairy, audacious goal, which will require them to be the leads on efficiency, stormwater capture, recycling, you name it, and exercising those groundwater basins that they are so lucky to have, but which, like the basins in the San Gabriel Valley, are Superfund sites. So you've got to get clever at figuring out how to get water into the ground from both of those sources, be able to take it out safely, as well as green the city while you're at it. So hopefully we'll get a taste of the amazing work that's happening around the world, but in particular in this arena. And so with that, I'll turn it over to John. Yeah, I'm happy to. Sorry. How do I get back? Is the problem? Here, there you go.
Sure, I can do it. Hi and thank you. My name is John Lieberzahn. I'm here with Tomorrow Water BKT, and I'm honored to be part of this distinguished panel today. Our company was founded in Korea 25 years ago. And so today I wanted to take you through a story about some of the innovative water management initiatives that were undertaken there in recent years. So, with that, I will welcome you to Seoul, South Korea in 1962. Through the very heart of the city runs the Cheonggye Stream, once considered the body of Seoul with the King's Palace at its head. But in the first half of the 20th century, populations were exploding, sewage volumes were increasing, there were slums building along the banks of the Cheonggye, and this river turned into a giant open sewer. The river was an eyesore. It was a health hazard. Even people that tried to navigate, I'm sorry, this is actually a picture of the LA River in 1936 before it was paved. If I had more time, I'd help you through the parallels, but just keep in mind, we'll go back to the Cheonggye. The designers in Seoul decided they were going to solve this problem the way that engineers usually do. They put concrete over it, so a giant 4-lane freeway was constructed in the 60s. This was a freeway that passed 168,000 cars a day through the middle of downtown. That's about half the flow of the 405, which completely curtailed opportunities for redevelopment. It was loud, it was noisy. So it did solve the sewage problem, but did it really solve the city's problem? After 30 years of downtown decline, in a heroic act of political bravery, stakeholder involvement, and technical creativity, Seoul decided that they were going to re-expose the stream bed and develop a vibrant green space along its banks. So they removed the freeway, you can see here in 3 parts. Stream flow was restored, and now, today, this area is a beloved urban icon serving both residents and businesses. People come from all over the world to see the Cheonggye Stream redevelopment area. The area around the stream is cleaner, more beautiful, and enjoyable. Property values close to here have risen by about 300%, despite the worries of businesses along the original freeway that they would essentially lose all their customers. It's even used, you can see here, for entertainment and cultural events. This is the yearly Lantern Festival held in Seoul, now held right on the Cheonggye. Now, how did they achieve this? Well, to guarantee stream flow, the designers wanted to use treated effluent from a downstream treatment plant, but using potable drinking water to fill a stream was too expensive, and irrigation quality standards were too lax to keep people safe. So they developed a new swimmable water quality standard that matched the intended use of the receiving water. The process flow is down there with some of the standard requirements, and if you want to talk the technical side, come find me afterwards. Tomorrow Water, our company, was also involved in a similar non-potable reuse application in the city of Incheon, where the Central Park, the Songdo Central Park, was outfitted with an artificial lake, all based on flow from reuse water, treated wastewater. Again, you can see there's golf courses around the area, boating, people recreating. This type of water reuse has a number of triple bottom line benefits, both for cities and their residents. So you can see increased property values, downtown development, of course, recreation. Also, for example, around the Cheonggye, temperatures went down by about 6 degrees Fahrenheit due to reduction in urban heat island effect. So you're seeing energy savings relating to that from having to air condition less, as well as just a more pleasant city environment. Fine particulate air pollution was reduced in these surrounding regions with some of this artificial reuse, better irrigation management opportunities, green spaces, and even an increase in wildlife diversity around some of these areas. So a lot of different benefits. Now, let's turn our eyes towards the plants that make all this reuse possible. Here's what your average wastewater treatment plant looks like in the US today, and BKT, Tomorrow Water, has been helping to outfit these types of plants for 20 years. But we want to look forward to, as was said, a new paradigm. So people have started talking about water resource recovery facilities, but we really want to take it even one step further. These are critical, vital infrastructures, but they're not waste treatment, and even resource recovery isn't enough. We really want to take this to a level where we're thinking of these as water factories that are taking a raw effluent resource and producing valuable products, such as valuable reuse water, biomass, energy, and other living things. We want to transform these facilities from a cost stream to a profit stream, and water treatment in general. That's really the goal that private enterprise would like to try helping with. And we believe that we can do it with the right technology and the right leadership. To achieve this, at our company, we're working on establishing new process trains that focus on energy savings and on energy production using the latest developments in treatment science. This involves some new equipment, new biologies even, new designs, and new delivery methods. Again, for any of the specific unit processes, come find me afterwards. Our company came from Korea to LA. It's a long way to establish our offices in the US. And it's because we believe that this city is perfectly located for the future of water technology and innovation. LA has everything that a company like ours needs in order to thrive. Capital and human resources, smart regulators like the ones in this room, and managers providing both carrots and sticks to promote efficiency and innovation. Also, here you've got a hot and sunny climate without a lot of seasonal change, which is really relevant to those parts of the world that are most lagging in terms of sanitation and water infrastructure and are going to need the most help moving forward, the most innovation in making sure that those areas are properly served. So this is a nice test bed for new technologies. And most of all, the people of LA understand the real value of water, of energy, and the pressing need for innovation here. So, you know, people have heard of Silicon Valley. I'm sure everybody's heard of that. A lot of people talk about Bio Valley in Boston. We'd like to see LA as the new Water Valley, as the nexus of innovation around water and water technologies worldwide. That's, you know, our dream as a company. Thank you. And we invite you to hopefully partner with us. We're going to do our best to contribute to that dream, and we'd like to work together.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Great time. Great. All right. Terrific. What was our order? Let's move next to Dr. Merkel.
I'll just take it from here. One of the things just to remind people about, you know, you hear about the quote drought being over. For us in Southern California, it doesn't feel like it's over at all, because it's not. I mean, we've basically had about 2.5 inches of rain in the last 11 months, and obviously what we've just experienced with the fires was absolutely unprecedented in our lifetime. And so for us, the consequences of climate change have really never been clearer than what we're experiencing right now. To focus on making local water a reality, there's a couple things. I agree wholeheartedly with Felicia that we haven't done this as quickly as we would like. I mean, many of us have been talking about integrated water management for 20, 25 years, and it's a lot easier said than done. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. You need strong leadership, planning, funding and initiatives, incentives to actually move in that direction, an education program, a governance system that actually works to really manage integrated water management in an effective way, regulatory requirements when needed, and then if you have regulatory requirements, enforcement against those who just are not paying attention and complying with those regulatory requirements. And in that regard, you look at our region in Los Angeles, and I think we've done pretty well on leadership. I think we've done really well on planning. There are a lot of great integrated water management plans that the county has put together, that the city has put together, that UCLA has put together. So there's no shortage of creativity in the planning side. On the funding side, it's been a mixed bag. Most of the funds have been through propositions, through bonds, which are good for capital projects, but obviously don't pay a penny for operation and maintenance, and for programs. And so that's really been a huge problem. So with every success story like Prop O, with the City of LA, $500 million stormwater funding measure that passed all the way back in 2004, with tremendous projects that have been built. There's also, with the state, with the various different propositions, a wide variety of other different projects, but we don't have that ongoing funding source, and so there's been a lot of discussion at this Verity Exchange for the last few years on that particular issue. Governance in our region, in the Los Angeles area, is really difficult. There was a study done by the folks at the Luskin School at UCLA that there's somewhere around 200 different agencies with some water management responsibility in Los Angeles County. That's not really great for governance, and even governance and really getting things done in places like the city of Los Angeles can be difficult with tension between, you have one agency, Bureau of Sanitation, in charge of wastewater treatment, and then DWP is obviously in charge of providing us with water supply. And so sometimes, there's two different entities, obviously, with similar goals, but progress sometimes can be difficult. And you look at regulatory enforcement going like, do we really need a consent decree every time to really make sure we have progress? When there have been consent decrees, there's been great success stories on integrated water management around the country. I mean, we've seen places like Portland and Philadelphia, et cetera. But there's got to be a way to do this without getting sued. And to me, that's something that we really need to focus on. You look at total maximum daily loads. Obviously, that was a pretty large regulatory hammer within this region. But it's been very, very mixed success. Very long time periods for compliance. And no funding really to get to implement the program. So again, a lot of great plans. We've seen these enhanced watershed management plans by watershed, but without funding to actually make those a reality, the progress has been very, very slow. And so that's something that is pretty tough. So do we need to get to the point where you have laws in place that say, we need to have zero discharge from coastal treatment plants? I mean, that was obviously something Senator Bob Hertzberg tried a couple years ago. It went nowhere. But the point being is there you had a push from a legislator to say we need to value our treated wastewater as our part of our water supply, and dumping it into Santa Monica Bay is a complete and utter waste. But unfortunately, that didn't go anywhere. There could be a new regulatory tool to force that issue. Since we're finding more and more that there's a potential link between nutrient discharge and ocean acidification and hypoxia issues near discharges. And so that's something that could be factored into this whole thing. So on the funding side, what's exciting finally, I think it's the 10th year anniversary of LA County saying, let's go for a county stormwater funding measure. And this is the year they're really, 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 really going to do it. And so getting a 2/3 vote in November has never been more important, and that's something that's critical. With some of the other funding measures that have recently passed, we're funding transportation at a record rate, and it would be great to see Metro with some of those funding really make sure that the transportation sector is paying their fair share and really adding to our water infrastructure in a big way, and making sure that stormwater is actually being captured and reused from those metro projects or infiltrated into the ground and not adding to our pollution sources. So that's something that needs to occur a lot more and more. One of the things that Felicia did bring up, which I thought I was going to be alone in bringing up, but you beat me on this one, was looking at watershed as infrastructure. It's been very interesting to see this sort of discussion occurring. In the state of California, there's an NGO called Pacific Forest Trust, which is really looking at this in the Bay Delta area in a pretty exciting way. It's actually occurred in the Albuquerque area. I just heard from Sandra Postel, who's been a longtime water writer and used to work at National Geographic as their water expert for about 6 years. She has a new book that just came out called Replenished, and one of the chapters focuses on Albuquerque and how they've looked at watersheds, the upstream watershed that burnt all the way to the ground, as infrastructure, and raised over $100 million to actually restore that watershed, realizing that there's water quality benefits, water supply benefits. And right now, you look at our rate of wildfire in much of California, and it's an unprecedented rate. We're burning more frequently, more acreage than we ever have before. And how we respond, allowing natural succession to occur, to really restore the ecology in those areas, we don't have the luxury of that sort of time. I think we're going to have to start seeing a lot more intervention from the state, from other entities, nonprofits, et cetera, and really restoring those watersheds as quickly as possible because of the benefits that we can get from everything from greenhouse gas emissions reductions to reducing mudslide risk, to enhancing our water supply, and making sure that the water quality that's coming through those watersheds isn't so poor that we literally can't have it go through our treatment systems. And so those are the sorts of things that I think need to be looked at in a more progressive way. And just to close, since I know I'm probably over, is that UCLA has started this Sustainable LA Grand Challenge. We've been really fortunate to work with the City of LA very closely, as well as the county and others on this. And really with the audacious goal of what would it take to get to 100% local water in Los Angeles County by 2050, so a long horizon. And so obviously that involves water recycling and having zero discharge from our sewage treatment plants, getting a lot more out of stormwater capture. We do a great job in the San Gabriel, not so hot in the LA River watershed, getting a lot more out of our groundwater basins, pump and treat. So excited that DWP and the partnership with the State Water Resources Control Board on launching the latest pump and treat project, not waiting for EPA and Superfund to solve the San Fernando Valley groundwater problems and just taking matters into their own hands is just transformational. And then, as we've heard time and time again, as great as we've done on water conservation, although we've backslid a fair amount since the mandate, I think we're down to about 15% or so statewide now from 24.5. So those weren't permanent changes, they were behavioral changes, thanks to everybody here and beyond. But we really need to get down to more like 75 gallons per capita per day if we're going to have any chance to get to self-sufficiency by 2050.
Is that a plug for our water efficiency legislation that's pending, Mark?
Hopefully strengthening it dramatically from where it is right now.
You get the votes, and it will be.
I know.
So thank you. Thanks very much for covering all that ground. And you made the whole point of the notion of intentional water management was really about the fact that things don't just happen. It's that we have to think about them, come up with the data to support them, the dollars, the people, et cetera. Thank you for pulling that together. Kuz.
Thank you. Well, I was able to crash through the orange curtain a little earlier in the afternoon and make it into LA County. It's always great to be back in LA, although I always get lost downtown LA. It took me about 20 minutes to find parking. But anyway, Mike Marcus, Orange County Water District. We are, the Orange County Water District manages a very large groundwater basin in central and northern Orange County. And currently we provide about 75% of the total water demands to 2.5 million people. So it's very important for us to be able to maintain supply into the basin. And the main sources of supply that we have a little bit of Santa Ana River flow. There's actually water flowing in a river in Southern California. That's because in the upper watershed they discharge their wastewater into the Santa Ana. It flows downstream. We capture it. Of course, we also have natural rainfall. We know what happens with that. Currently, I think Mark said earlier what they had in LA. In Anaheim, we've had 1.47 inches of rain so far this water year. And you look outside and the Santa Anas are blowing and it's 85 degrees and we're at the end of January. February normally being our wettest month. And are we on track again to get 5 inches of rain like we did during the last drought? We always have to be prepared for that. We live in a desert. I've lived here all my life. You see recurring drought. It's not uncommon. So we need to plan for how we are able to deal with that. What we've done in Orange County for our groundwater basin is we have invested in recycled water. So we have used that as a source of supply into the groundwater basin, specifically potable reuse. And currently our recycled water program provides about 1/3 of the supply into the groundwater basin on an annual basis. So this is a highly reliable source of water, gives us water supply reliability, helps us be able to have a sustainable water supply for the basin. And how have we done that? We've done it through a project called the Groundwater Replenishment System. So what does a groundwater replenishment system do? It takes secondary effluent that otherwise would be discharged to the ocean, so wastewater. We don't consider it a waste, we consider it a resource, as has been mentioned. I think John mentioned that in his presentation. And what we do is we take that secondary, we run it through an advanced purification process consisting of microfiltration, reverse osmosis, UV light with hydrogen peroxide. We turn the wastewater into distilled water. We then put that back into the groundwater basin where it becomes a supply for the basin. So this is a sustainable type of operation. We actually went online in January of 2008, January 10th, 2008. So we've just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. The original plant was 70 million gallons per day. Our board decided we needed to do more. We expanded it to 100 million gallons per day in 2015. We are currently under design for our final expansion. Our final expansion will take us to 130 million gallons of water per day. That's about 130,000 acre feet of water per year, enough water for 1 million people. Once we've done that, we will be taking all of the recyclable water from the Orange County Sanitation District. They have 2 plants, we'll be taking all of that water. So the only discharge, and will always be a discharge, is for the concentrate flows. But of the recyclable water, 100%. So we're very proud of that. As was mentioned, I think Felicia mentioned it, it's a long process. It doesn't happen overnight. We started in the mid-90s. We started pilot testing in 1995. At that time, microfiltration had not been used on wastewater. It was predominantly used on potable water. We pilot tested that along with some new membranes, RO membranes, thin film composite membranes. We pilot tested the AOP. And we decided to move forward with the project. In 1997, we partnered with the Orange County Sanitation District, and we started the journey. And then it took us time to secure all the permitting. At that time, we didn't have the groundwater regulations approved yet. And so we had to have an independent panel that worked with the regulators. We got those conditions in our permit, and we were able to go online in 2008. So you can see that it took us 13 years, start to finish. And even for our expansion, we started in 07, it took us until 15. So it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, it takes commitment, it takes political will. And we were very fortunate to have that. The other thing that was discussed early was a partnership. That is a key to these types of projects. We look forward to LA Sanitation and DWP working together to develop their project, but that is a key to success. Outreach is also a key to success to these types of projects. You have to have the public outreach. The benefits of the project, there's actually a water quality advantage. Right now, our groundwater has very high TDS. With the low TDS water that we're providing out of the plant, we're getting a water quality benefit. There's also the energy benefit. It takes half the energy that it takes to bring water from Northern California, 1/3 the energy that it takes to desalinate seawater. And it also is the ultimate form of conservation. We are using the water over and over again. If you think about it, through the recycled plant, we're drinking it. That water used inside the household goes back to the treatment plant, and we're reusing it over and over and over again. So they are the right projects to do. We're very proud of our project, and that ends my presentation.
No, that's terrific. It also highlights, I was thinking we should do a competition for which project hits the most multiple benefits that can be there, or has the most unusual partnerships required across non-traditional lines. But a point to make along the customization side. One of the things that's extraordinary about Orange County, of course, and the same is true in LA County, San Gabriel Valley, is having a large groundwater basin that you can use to put your recycled water or your stormwater into. If you go further south to San Diego, and we don't have a San Diegan on the panel, but if we did, they don't have much of a groundwater basin, so they don't know where to put it. So as a result, you have the city of San Diego being a leader in pushing for indirect potable reuse surface water augmentation, and we have regulations along the track now out in draft to do that. But they're not just doing it to be cool, they're also doing it because they thought about the full cycle of their wastewater problem. They don't have a lot of room to go to full secondary where they are at Point Loma, and so they're skipping that step and then having to bring it back to going straight to trying to recycle it, which, if you think about it, is smart planning, but I don't think people realized what it was they were trying to do for a while. And again, it took a while to do it.
They did for 20 years either. But
Yeah, it's unclear, having granted those waivers myself. It's hard to know in any event. But we all dreamed of what it is they're trying to do now. So next I'm going to turn to Angela George Moody, who has one of the hardest jobs in all of this, under the radar, doing extraordinary work with her team, and having to come up above the radar now to go the next leg. So looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Okay. Yeah, as Felicia said, my name is Angela George Moody. I am a Deputy Director with the Los Angeles County Department of Public Works. And just to give you a little perspective on who Public Works is, we provide municipal services throughout Los Angeles County to the 10 million residents within LA County. When I say municipal services, our department is broken into 6 core service areas, or for most people, 6 business areas. Transportation, public buildings. I manage water resources. We have emergency services, development services, and so on. And with regards to the water resources core service area, I'm really framing a picture for you. I manage plan, operate, and maintain all the facilities for the Los Angeles County Flood Control District, as well as 6 waterworks districts within the region, and those waterworks districts being the 3rd largest retailer within Los Angeles County. So with that perspective, I want to say that the Flood Control District, its mission really kind of lies wholeheartedly within the intentional water management fold. What we do for the Flood Control District, or our mission, is really flood protection or he threw up the 5 minutes. Okay, flood protection, as well as water conservation for the region. And so, when we look at things as the district, Mark kind of nudged me a little bit in saying, hey, the things that you do within the region are great, especially in the eastern part of the region. We operate 14 dams and 26 spreading grounds. What we do is during times like last year when we had a great deal of water or rain, we captured that water behind our dams, and we allowed the rainy periods to pass, and then during the dry periods, we allow water to come out of that system or down into our system, into our open channel network, and then we pull it into spreading grounds. And we recharge in those spreading grounds the groundwater aquifers. And so that's been going on for decades. What we've done in partnership with DWP and other water agencies throughout the region is we've increased the capacity of those spreading grounds. Modified those dams to be able to retain additional water for conservation purposes. Another, I'm going to say, paradigm shift for the Flood Control District, one of the big ones, is that we don't look at flood protection and as a sole purpose of the district in complement with the water conservation. When we look at our projects, we now have development teams, and those development teams cross all core service areas, those business areas that I talked about, where we bring everyone together and start looking at the needs of the community in water, in transportation. We're trying to bring everyone together and address a comprehensive, and made a comprehensive goal for all the communities within Los Angeles County. Something else I want to talk to you about, I'm going to skip over a couple of things because I want to make sure that we cover everything, is Mark talked a little bit about the Safe Clean Water Program. In other words, the County of Los Angeles, about 8 to 10 years ago, embarked on an effort to bring additional resources to the region with regards to stormwater. What we did recently was, for our Board of Supervisors, we did a rapid assessment. We said there's a lot of different types of water within Los Angeles County. We need to be more sustainable locally, and what does that mean? What is the most viable type of water that the County Board of Supervisors and the county as a whole could pursue in its efforts to be more sustainable? And what we determined was that is stormwater. And so what we're moving forward with is the development of a funding measure or an expenditure plan and a tax methodology, which is possibly going to be proposed for by the County Board of Supervisors in November. If you guys were here this morning, Supervisor Kuehl announced she's pushing for a November ballot measure to bring resources to the region in regards to stormwater. And that stormwater, that initiative, is based on multi-benefits. It is to augment water supplies and improve water quality as a whole. And to complement that, what the supervisors have really charged us with doing is also development of a county water plan. Mark said earlier that there's a lot of water plans within the region that are really good. But the question becomes, when we look at the County of Los Angeles as a whole, just as the state has done with the state's water plan, what are we truly seeking to do comprehensively, countywide, from the Pacific Ocean all the way to Avenue A in Palmdale? And I've been charged with having my staff develop a county water plan with individuals like you, stakeholders throughout the county, bring it all together, incorporate all the water plan efforts regionally, develop something that could ultimately be folded into the county sustainability plan by 2019. And with that, Felicia's standing, so I'm going to stop.
Yeah, sorry, this is my warning, because I can't let you know otherwise down the thing. You could wrap up, but I want to thank you. It's one of those things about being older and moving around and being able to talk about this work across the decades, since Mark was just a little puppy and the rest of you were just a little puppy, pretty much, is that I can remember the day when the people in your department referred to me as that woman. And I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to see you and see where we are today. And so with that, Tracy, take it away.
Okay, in the last few minutes, I'm going to try to talk quickly. And forgive me for shuffling papers. I'm not going to do the PowerPoint in the interest of time. But as Felicia mentioned, one of the drivers for us really has been the leadership of our Mayor, Mayor Garcetti, who has challenged us through the LA Sustainability Plan and through his Executive Directive Number 5 on a waterwise city to push the envelope of recycled water. The goal being, the overarching goal being that we need to source our water supply locally, 50% of it, by 2035. With that, we have, and we had been, working on recycling water projects and stormwater projects. Our One Water Initiative is an effort that's been going on, as Mark said, nearly 20 years now, working in collaboration between the two major departments in the City of LA, Sanitation and DWP, to put forth projects that will get us to meet that goal. I'm going to focus on the 4 water reclamation plants that we have within the City of Los Angeles and just touch on those. Terminal Island Water Reclamation Plant is down in the Terminal Island area. It's a small treatment plant, but it is fully advanced treated. So we bring in the raw wastewater, go through a microfiltration reverse osmosis process, and produce 12 million gallons per day of potable water that is used to supply the Dominguez Gap seawater intrusion barrier. So that does become a part of the potable water system. In our Los Angeles Glendale Water Reclamation Plant, another one of our smaller plants, we are working with DWP on a couple of recycled water projects to extend the purple pipe distribution. And as part of that, we are adding flow equalization at the treatment plant. One of the challenges that we face is with the Los Angeles River, and with the recycled water demands to offset potable, we are working in an environment where we're balancing both of those important facets. So for the Los Angeles Glendale Water Reclamation Plant and the Tillman Water Reclamation Plant, our goal is to maximize the recycled water for potable reuse, as well as maintain what we have in the LA River to sustain the environmental support that it provides, support wildlife habitat, and the actual revitalization of the river and economy around it. So that's a challenge that we are working with. At our Tillman Water Reclamation Plant, we've been doing our most recent pilot research over the past 2 years, just coming to conclusion now. And as part of that research, we are proposing a different advanced treatment train. At Terminal Island, we have microfiltration and reverse osmosis. At our Tillman plant, we are proposing an ozone biologically activated carbon process. A couple of major benefits, actually 3 major benefits. One is that the capital and the O&M costs are significantly less. We're talking about 50% less on the capital end. The benefit is that there's no brine generation. So this is a biological process that will actually break down the organics and the other chemicals of emerging concern, so that we don't produce a brine, which would then, in our case, go back in the sewer and be something that our Hyperion plant would have to deal with. The other major benefit is that it's low in energy use. So the O&M costs are significantly less. Our carbon footprint is much smaller. So we're working now with the State Water Resources Control Board and the Regional Water Quality Control Board on permitting this process. Definitely a challenge for us, but we think there's a lot of potential there. And between sanitation and DWP, we are diligently pursuing that effort. At Hyperion, that is our flagship down here in Playa Vista. We have work going on now for a 1.5 MGD advanced water purification facility, the traditional MFRO, front-ended with MBR process, the membrane biological reactor process. It's somewhat of a demonstration project. That water will be used at LAWA, the airport, as well as within the treatment plant at Hyperion itself, and possibly DWP Scattergood power generation plant. We are concurrently working on a membrane biological reactor process as a pilot at Hyperion. The thought there being that we can produce a much higher quality water than we currently produce. Hyperion is at the end of the line. It's a secondary treatment plant, and we discharge it currently out to the Santa Monica Bay. So in working with our recycled water partners, this is part of what we talk about in terms of breaking down silos, rather than in the past where we were saying, Hyperion, our permit is for secondary treatment. We treat to secondary standards and we discharge to the Santa Monica Bay. If somebody else wants to take that water and try to recycle it, go for it. And we've worked on that with West Basin. And what we've realized is that the benefits here, when you take away the boundaries, the benefits really are by treating that water at the treatment plant, providing a better quality water that then goes to our partner agencies for tertiary and advanced treatment. So this is something that we are piloting. We're moving forward with the pilot work right now with the plan that we will have 35 million gallons a day that will be treated to this standard at Hyperion and then be used for further recycling, whether that's tertiary standards or advanced treatment. So we're excited about that effort. The talk has been about moving things forward, making them happen. As Mike was saying, they don't happen overnight. What we're calling near term are projects that are probably 6 to 8 years out there. Our biggest challenge is the last remaining 100 to 120 MGD at Hyperion. We need to figure out a way to recycle that water, to get it out of the bay, and put that to beneficial reuse. So that's currently on our plate between DWP, sanitation, and others in the region. We will continue to move that part forward.
Thank you very much. At the risk of turning this sort of fruit salad of both vision and technical things that are necessary to get something done, I want to ask you all quickly, in the short amount of time we have left, a couple of questions. So let's consider it sort of a quick lightning round, and then folks who have individual questions, you can come up and continue to ask them. If you all want to ask it together, Michael can moderate the rest of the session because I'm going to have to leave. But here's the question. The first is, what's your favorite example outside your own program that you've seen that sort of hits on the most cylinders, that feels like something where someone thought very creatively about the multiple pop for drop they could get out of a project, or something that showed real creativity? And as you answer it, when it gets to you, John, I'm going to let you start. Tell us why the flower thing is there. Is it because flowers seem cool in a conceptual drawing? Or is there something about the chemistry of what you're going to be producing in that vision that's particularly good for flowers? So I'll give you a moment to think about that, because that popped up. And then the second thing would be, what do you think the most important ingredient is to help you do what you can envision faster? Mark, for example, mentioned both funding. I think we've all talked about funding, but also, is a regulatory driver important, or a regulatory incentive? What is it that would make the biggest the biggest difference in your ability to make the projects that you're working on go faster? What do you need most? So first, what's the coolest thing you know? But John gets to answer the flower question first, just to amuse me. And then what do you need most to make the next big leap?
Okay, thanks, Felicia. So with the flower question, I think it's a little bit symbolic, but the real answer is that there are water resources at these sites, and they don't have to be, concrete, in and out, sort of pass-through drains. These can be sites that are sites for the public to enjoy and also receive an experience of value and of an aesthetic experience as well. So there's a number of companies in Europe, for instance, that are actually building wastewater treatment plants, and on top of that, placing essentially botanical gardens in closed systems that then also have a tertiary polishing function.
So like the
because
Japanese garden at Tillman, for example.
So yes, but even so
more.
there's some companies that actually place all the treatment in a sort of smaller scale municipal sites underground with that on top. So you have sort of a downflow and then a recycle, and people can really use the space to also do some of the polishing activities that for some of the very fine quantities. So we're trying to get down to very low nutrient levels. So producing a product is sort of the next step, where people are a little uncomfortable producing an edible product, and there's a lot of health concerns, but of course something that is not going to go into human consumption is a great opportunity for producing sort of biomass products as a use for some of those low amounts of nutrients that we need to scrub out at certain volumes. That's the first question, I think, and also covers some of the innovations that you can look for out there. I think other innovations that aren't specifically on the plant level are things like the San Antonio River Walk in terms of kind of integrated water management. What was the second part?
What do you most need to
So-
make whatever your next dream is come true?
I think that what we would, I think there's financing out there. There's a lot of technology available. There's a willingness to go out and do the work. What we are looking for, and I think we're receiving, but we'd like to see even more, is boldness and a little bit of risk tolerance. I think innovation always has some inherent risk, and the private sector is more than comfortable enough to take a risk on the financial side. But we need partners in regulators, in decision makers to say, yes, let's try some of these new technologies. This has been a very conservative space, and there's ways to structure deals to protect the public and ensure that we can still protect the public both fiscally and in terms of health, to make sure that private sector does what it does well, which is to take on some of those financial risks specifically and bring new technologies to market faster and more efficiently.
Great. I'm going to mix up the order a little bit now. Angela, I'm going to let Mark have the last word. I owe him that for so many things. Angela, coolest thing out there that you've seen, and what do you need most for your program?
I think outside of my purview is really the efforts that I see in association with the Recycle Water Program with metropolitan water districts, the way that they are proposing enhancements or to move water in association with their Carson treatment facility. I also think there's a lot in some of these distributed systems. Tree People has come up with a couple, and I think that there's a lot to be said for those, and working through them, I think they'll be really important to us locally with regards to
Well,
our
and
water
your
management.
program's invested $100 million in
That's
their
right.
vision out in Sun Valley, which is pretty incredible.
Yes.
How
As
about
far-
what you need most for your program?
I'm going. Mark said say money, but I'm gonna link it. It's community awareness. Over the last 5 years, now going on 6 years, people have really and truly become aware of water. And I think this morning they said water's not sexy. Water's not sexy. Parks are sexy. Transportation, when you talk about potholes, that's sexy. People see it. They feel the need to, or it hits them at home, and it's something that they say, I want to support. And I think water, making that something that the community is aware of our need for it, is really important. And then comes
That's good.
possibly money.
Yeah, they're not disconnected. All right, Mike.
Coolest thing, I think, is what the country of Singapore has done with their water supply. For those of you that don't know, they broke away from Malaysia a while back. They get all their water from Malaysia. They were 100% dependent on Malaysia. Here in the next 15 or 20 years, they'll be 100% self-sufficient. And the steps
They're
they've...
like 50% or something now, right? Something like that?
Yes, and
Impressive.
it's getting larger and larger. So they're developing more water supply, and the way they go about that is fascinating. As far as what could help me, I don't know that there's much that could help me, but I think what can help the industry is help with the regulations. And when regulations, I'm talking about the direct potable reuse regulations. There was legislation this past year that set up a time frame for the state board to come up with the regulations for what's called direct potable reuse. And although the funding may not be in the governor's current budget, we would hope, I think, collectively, the collective we, I think, would hope that the two positions that are necessary are funded so
yeah.
that those
We would hope
regulations can move forward. And I think that that'll
They're
help.
not in the budget?
That'll help become
Damn it.
that'll help become a game changer, I think, because it will allow others to be a little bit more creative in their approach. I mean, the MET project could become a DPR project instead of an IPR project. I'm pointing to Mark because Mark is a director at the at MET. Oh, I'm not supposed to say that? But I think it'll help others take a look at project. You mentioned earlier, right now you need an environmental buffer. You need a groundwater basin.
Right.
Orange County's blessed. That's why
Right.
we developed our project. So DPR is going to allow a lot of other agencies to be able to do the work.
Great.
I'll leave it at that.
Tracy?
I think it's already all been said, but really, as far as a project that I think is fantastic, I would point to Orange County. I'm thinking straightforward. They've done this at a huge scale, and it's something that we need for Hyperion. DPR, the other thing I was talking about in terms of what we need are regulations, as Mike was saying. We're working on Tillman Water Reclamation Plant right now and dealing with some of the regulations that are in place for groundwater replenishment to get that project permitted, which is an IPR project. DPR is really going to take us to the next level. I think that's going to be huge. Money, of course, is an issue, and political support and public awareness and support, just to understand, you know, the issues that we have in terms of resiliency and the need to be prepared for climate change. Those are really important things.
Great. Thank you. Mark, last words.
Well, Mike, we all love your project. There's no question about it.
And we love Mike, too.
And the fact that the Orange County Sanitation Districts went to full secondary obviously made your job a heck of a lot easier. So that's one of the things that's important about it too. A local one, City of Santa Monica, their commitment to go to 100% local water self-sufficiency by 2020. It's really dramatic because of where they were. They had 0% local water during the 90s. And they decided to go pump and treat and go after the oil companies and the polluters themselves and turn that around and then make the difference in conservation and now doing stormwater capture and hopefully recycle water. So it's sort of exciting to watch that in my hometown, to see that sort of commitment. From a governance perspective, I think what Celeste Cantu and others did at SAWPA is a great example
Good.
that God knows we need
example.
within the LA region in a big way, because they did a hell of a lot better on getting bond funds than we did here, because we're all competing against each other rather than sort of being on the same page. And you just see how that's...
Do you want to just explain for
So
in
that's
like
the-
2 sentences what they did?
Yeah, so if you don't know, the Santa Ana Watershed Agency, what they did was they basically got all the water districts to work together on the same page and push projects and come up with a pretty innovative approach, maybe not as good as it could be from the standpoint of aquatic life, but on every other aspect, pretty extraordinary. And to me, it was just getting everybody to do a complex, what was a total hodgepodge governance, and turning it into an organized fashion shows you it could be possible. And that was something that a lot of people here, you know, we struggle with every day. You know, when we have some cities with 3 different agencies that are doing water supply, like Maywood. I mean, that's just crazy, and that's something that needs to change. And then the things that I talked about before on what needs to change, the leadership, not the planning, because we do a good job, funding education, governance, regulatory, and enforcement, and making sure they're really all tied to climate. Because, the days of looking backwards to create our infrastructure just don't make sense anymore, and we really need to look forward and look at all the climate variability in making decisions on what we're going to do for our infrastructure moving forward, and making sure that we're building in resilience from this point forward as well.
Great, thank you. Well, there's much more we could talk about, and I encourage you to talk with folks individually, but thank you for joining us at the end of a very long day. Hope you've been inspired.